Jai Shri Krishna everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to start one of the most important topics in SQL Server is SQL data types. Now, before creating tables, inserting records or designing databases, understanding data types is very important because in SQL every column store different type of data. For example, employee name store text values. Employee age store numeric values. Salary stores decimal values and joining date stores data values. Now imagine one situation. Suppose in employee age column instead of number someone insert text value. For example, employee name. Someone insert employee name Harshada. Will that make any sense? No, right. Or suppose in joining date column, someone inserts salary. Some uh, some employee's salary is 50,000. Again, that is correct. In date value, if we insert someone's salary, is that correct? No. So, to avoid this kind of invalid data, SQL uses data types. Now, one important question comes here. Why are data types important in SQL? Because data types decide many important things inside databases. For example, what kind of data we can store, how much memory will be used, database performance, data accuracy. Now let's understand each point with simple real life example. What kind of data we can store? Data types decide what type of value which we can insert inside a column. For example, suppose I have an employee name column. Now, name contains text values like Rahul, Amit, Vaibhav. So, for this, we use character data types like varchar. Now, suppose I want to store employee age. Age contains numeric values like 22, 25, 30, 40. So, here we use numeric data types like integer. Now, suppose I want to store salary. Salary may contain decimal values like 25,000. I will give an example. Salary contains salary contain decimal values like example 25,000 point 50, 45,000 75. Okay, suppose I want to store joining date. So then we use data types like date or date time. So different data requires different data types. How much memory uses? How much memory will be used? Data types also decide memory uses. For example, if small values are stored using big integer unnecessarily, then extra memory will be wasted. But if we use proper data type, database memory will be optimized. That's why choosing correct data type is very important in real projects. Next is database performance. Correct data types improve database performance because less memory usage means faster query execution, better performance, better storage management. That's why database developers carefully choose data types while designing tables. Fourth one is data accuracy. Data accuracy is data types also maintain data accuracy. For example, suppose salary column should contain decimal values. If wrong data type is selected, then data may get truncate or incorrect values may be stored. So, proper data types helps maintain accurate data inside database. That's why data types are one of the most important concepts in SQL Server. Then for all these values, SQL provided different data types categories. Now let's understand all categories of SQL data types step by step from basic to advanced with examples. SQL data types are divided into 7 types. First one is numeric data types, decimal data types, character or string data types, date and time data types, binary data types, boolean data types, Unicode character data types. Now let's understand each category deeply. Now let's start our first category of SQL data types, which is numeric data types. Okay, numeric data type are used to store whole numbers. Now, what do we mean by whole numbers? Whole numbers are means numbers with decimal values. Numbers with decimal numbers without decimal values. For example, 10, 25, 100, 5000, these are whole numbers. But values like 10.5 with decimal, 25.75, these are not whole numbers. Okay, because these are not whole numbers because they contain decimal points. Now let's understand this with real example. Suppose in a company I want to store employee age. Okay, now employee age can be 22, 25, 30, 35. These are numeric values. Or suppose in a shopping application I want to store product quantity. Product quantity also 100 products, 250 products, 500 products. Again, these are numeric values. Or suppose in a company I want to store total number of employees. Maybe 500 employees, 2000 employees, 3000 employees. Again, these are numbers. Or suppose I want to store OTP numbers. For example, OTP is 4587987654, something like. These are also numeric values. So, whenever we want to store numbers, we use numeric data types. Okay. Now, numeric data types have a different subtypes. These subtypes are tiny integer, small integer, integer, and big integer. Now, why do we have a different types? Because every number because every number does not require same amount of memory. Some values are small, some are medium, and some are very large. So SQL provides different numeric data types based on storage, size, and range. Now let's understand each one step by step. Our first data type is tiny integer. First, now from the name itself, you can understand tiny means very small. So tiny integer is used to store very small numbers. Now let's see the size. The storage of size tiny integer is 1 byte. That means it consumes very less memory inside database. Now let's understand the range of tiny integer. The range of tiny integer is 0 to 255. Now many students get confused here. What does range mean? Range means minimum value and maximum value we can store. Minimum value, maximum value we can store. So in tiny integer, minimum value is 0 and maximum value is 255. That means you can store 10, 25, 100, 255 numbers using the tiny integer data type. But you can't store 256, 500, minus 1 because it is outside the range. Now, where do we use tiny integer in real projects? We use it when values are very small. For example, student age, rating, small quantity, OTP attempts. Now let's see the syntax. Suppose I want to store age column. Then I can write age tiny integer. Now let's see a complete example. Now one more important topics here. Here you can see we are creating table using create table statement. Don't worry, we will learn create table concept deeply in upcoming videos step by step with practical example. For now, just understand create table is used to create new table inside database, and inside that table we define column names, data types and constants. For example, now create table age column here and tiny integer is data type. Okay, this is the example. हम ऐसा column name and then data type. This is the syntax of the tiny integer. Very important. Next is very important interview point. Tiny integer cannot store negative values because its range starts from 0. Okay. Tiny integer store the value 10, 25, 100, 25, but not allowed after 256, 500 and minus 1. Okay, tiny integer does not allow negative values. This is the important point. Now let's move to our second numeric data types, which is small integer. Now small integer is bigger than tiny integer. Earlier, in tiny integer, we saw it can store only small positive values. But what if we want to store slightly bigger numbers? In that case, we use small integer. Now let's understand the storage size. Small integer takes 2 bytes memory. That means it can store more values compared to tiny integer. Now let's understand the range carefully because this is very important for interview. The range of small integer is minus, here is minus 32,768 to 32,761. Okay. Now here one important things to notice is negative value are allowed. That means we can store 100, 5,000, minus 100, minus 25,000. But we cannot store values outside the range, this range. Okay. Now let's understand this with the real life example. Suppose in a school management, system, we want to store exam marks of students. Now marks can be 100, 500, 1000. So small integer is enough. Or suppose in a shop application, we want to store product quantity. Product quantity maybe quantity is 500, 2000, 10,000. Again, small integer works properly. Okay, now let's say syntax. Suppose I want to store marks column, then I can write marks column name and then data type is small integer. Now let's see complete example. here create table name exam, marks, column name is small integer, marks is column name, small integer is data type. Here, so whenever values are not too small and not too large, we can use small integer. Okay, now let's move to our third numeric data type, which is integer. Integer is one of the most important Integer is one of the most important and most commonly used data types in SQL Server. So in real projects, developers use integer almost everywhere. Now, why is integer so popular? Because integer have good range, good performance, efficient memory uses. Now let's understand the storage size. Okay, integer takes 4 bytes memory and it supports a very large range of values. That's why integer is mostly used for IDs. Now let's understand with the real life example. Suppose in a company every employee has unique employee ID. Maybe it's 1001, 1002, 1003. Or in shopping application order IDs, or in banking system transaction IDs. For all these values, integer is commonly used. Now let's see syntax. Integer, this is the integer range. Okay. Syntax, every data type has the same syntax. This is the column name. We mentioned the column name, and then here is the data type. Okay, example, create table name employee, and then I added here the column and column name employee ID and integer. Okay, now one important interview question: why developer mostly use integer instead of big integer? Because integer already provides very large range and consumes less memory than big integer. So, unless application has huge amount of records, integer is preferred. That's why is the most real projects. Primary keys are created using integer. Now, one more term you may hear in real project is primary key. Is the primary key is constant. Again, don't worry, we will learn constant in detail in upcoming videos. For now, just remember primary key is the constant used to uniquely identify each record in a table. That means duplicate values and null values are not allowed in primary key column. Okay, for example, employee ID is usually created as primary key because every employee should have unique ID. That's why in most real projects, integer data type is commonly used with primary key constant columns. Okay. Now, let's move to our last numeric data type, which is the big integer. Now, from the name itself, big means very large. So, big integer is used to store very huge numeric values. Now, let's see storage size. Big integer takes 8 bytes of memory, which means it can store extremely large values. Now, where do we use big integer in real life? Suppose there is a banking application, every day millions of transactions happen, or insurance system storing huge customer records, or telecom companies storing call history data. In such application, integer range may become insufficient after some years. So developers use big integer. Now let's see syntax. Syntax is transaction ID, column name, big integer is data type. Now complete syntax is create table name, transaction ID, data type is big integer. That's it. Use cases, banking system, insurance system, telecom application, use transaction system. I explain these concepts. Now, interview question. Why big integer instead of integer? Answer is very simple. Integer has limited range, but big integer supports extremely huge values. So, when database size becomes massive, big integer is preferred. But remember one important thing, big integer consumes more memory. So, we should not use big integer unnecessarily. Always choose data type based on business requirement. Now, uh, final revision. So, today we understood numeric data types deeply. We covered first is tiny integer, second is small integer, third one is integer, and last one is fourth big integer. And we understood uh, every data type, storage size, range, syntax, real type example, interview points, where do use each data type. In the next video we will learn decimal and character data types with practical example. Thank you everyone, bye, मिलते हैं next video में.